of Dragons on the Wall. And holy crap, if you have not watched The Long Night already, get out of here and come back when you have, because there's a lot of crazy spoilers that we are going to dig into very shortly. I am Terri Schwartz, and I am feeling like Lyanna Mormont this week because I'm about to take down the biggest episode of Game of Thrones. With me is...
I am Joshua Yale, and this episode had me feeling like Ned Stark because it had me losing my head over all the crazy stuff that happened.
And I am Jim Vavida. I usually feel like Tyrion Lannister because I drink and I know things, but tonight I feel like Jorah Mormont because I'm fighting alongside the Queen.
Oh!
I run IGN brown nosing. That's my section.
That was not even rehearsed. That was so lovely, guys.
Right.
So let's start with the end of the episode. The big thing we've been waiting 8 seasons for. Can you believe that they finally defeated the Night King and all the White Walkers? Like, how are you feeling about that? Joshua, you go first.
I cannot believe that happened. You can even roll back the tape for last week. Don't roll back the tape, please, because we'll hear that I'm wrong. Because I thought, like, there's no way that they're going to beat him mid-season. I thought that surely they would lose, retreat to King's Landing, and go have some drama where they're like, seriously, let us in. The Night King's... He's on the way down here now. That did not happen. They just took him out, and in the most stunning way fashion. Totally awesome, but it's just a lot to process. I'm not sure how I feel about it totally, but definitely a WTF moment.
Yeah, Jim, how do you feel?
Yeah, I will say that I think this is the first time it really hit me that the show is coming to an end. That it is like the Night King is gone. And that's that. The White Walker's gone, the Whites, everything. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of argument made that it felt anticlimactic because even though it was 8 seasons coming, it was also like, 1,000 years of waiting for this to kind of happen, and then it just took 80 minutes of fighting. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was pretty stunning that it actually did happen in this episode. That whole theory last week that, he was a misdirect. He's going to King's Landing.
I loved that theory. I bought into that theory.
I know. Well, that didn't happen. And so here we are.
I know. So that's actually, you kind of summed up some of my criticisms on this. I'm with you, Joshua. Like, I need to watch it again. I need to watch the last couple episodes in the context of this. Like, it's been a lot to kind of process what's happening and then immediately sit down and talk about it. But I did, I know I'm going to get crap for this, but I did feel like it was a bit anticlimactic because you're right. This was like their first real showdown with the Night King, and then they were able to defeat him pretty soundly. And on top of that, I was really emotionally stealing myself for losing a lot of main characters, and that's kind of what they had set up. And I think a lot of the things that I think are my issue with it are my own expectations versus reality, and that's why I do want to give it another watch, and I know that my opinion might change, but I really had felt ready to be like have my heart ripped out of my chest and stomped on, and that didn't happen. We'll get to the people that we lost in this episode in a little bit, but no Starks died defending Winterfell. All it took was like when all it took, I know I'm going to get flack for this, but, it just took defeating the Night King after everyone else. And on the first kind of attempt or second attempt, I guess, after Jon tried to face him, he was taken down. So I'm left feeling like it was all a bit easy, with the understanding that the irony is it's taken this long to get to this point. But when we did build up to the end of the episode, when we saw the Night King facing Bran, I was like, oh, maybe this will spill into 2 episodes. And then, of course, Arya came in and had that amazing moment where she literally flew out of, I think, left field to take him out. What do you guys think? I know I'm kind of on the negative end of the spectrum.
I actually agree with you a lot, and I think what was missing was some sort of twist, some sort of subversion. Of course, someone could say that, no one could have predicted, Arya was going to be the one, but that's not quite what I mean of, it all went according to plan.
Roughly, yeah.
That shouldn't happen, right? Like he got lured into the Godswood and the Night King got taken out. And we were expecting, for him to, kill Bran, or maybe someone else comes in and like takes the power of the Night King and becomes like a Night King or Night Queen or something, or literally anything but what happened.
Yeah, I will say that there were a couple of directions they could have gone in. I kept waiting for, a surprise, some sort of twist, whether it was the Night King saying something, whether it was Bran gets taken out, Daenerys becomes the Night Queen, something like that. But I think maybe, not to drag Marvel into this, but knowing kind of how you felt about like Infinity War, I wonder if this isn't sort of the same thing where the people you were expecting to go didn't go, and it kind of went the way you thought it would, and then maybe the season finale will be the series finale will be
My
your
endgame.
endgame. I will
You're
say,
talking about me personally, which
Yes,
is I personally
you
did not
personally.
really care for Infinity War, and I personally really did enjoy Endgame.
but
And
I
we're
will
still bitter about it.
but I will say, like, you guys know the books. I haven't really read them. I've thumbed through it a little bit, but like even tonight, I was like, wait, the Night King's not really in the books that much. So, like, for me, as just somebody who knows the show, I felt like it was a good payoff. But yeah, there were certainly those moments where I'm like, oh, I guess you could have gone just a little bit different direction.
I will shout out our maester, Laura Prudhomme, who is not in this episode of Dragons on the Wall because she's literally still writing her review for The Long Night. I know she skewed a bit more positive than we did. Let's talk for a little bit, because I know we have kind of talked negatively. Let's talk about the things we did like in the episode, and then it's kind of talk about a couple more criticisms and move on to those deaths. So, Joshua, what were your favorite moments in the episode?
As far as like putting a massive like epic fantasy battle to screen, oh my
The dragons
God.
all fighting?
The dragons, yeah, in the fighting in the sky, like above the clouds, this like gorgeous shot. That opening shot of the Dothraki getting their araks lit up and then charging into battle, and then we just kind of artfully see the lights slowly go out as they're overwhelmed by a wave of zombies. The way they shot it and how just oppressive and how numerous the zombies were and the whites. Sorry, where it was just shot after shot of just really just gorgeous filmmaking. I was incredibly tense the whole time, wondering what was going to happen. But yeah, to what you said, now I'm getting a little negative, but just there wasn't quite payoff to all the tense moments because nobody like uber important, no like top tier characters died. Some people
Sorry,
died
Theon.
that we're upset about, but not like the ones we were most fearing for their lives. But as far as just like a thrilling fantasy battle, wow, tens across the board.
You're just giving out your like dollar bills, tens. Jim, what was your favorite?
I will say I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, and I think my favorite moment was probably just seeing the Night King being such a cocky SOB. Like he's just that little grin he allows himself, smirk really, and just the way he kind of like, what's up, brah? Like even when he's falling from the sky, he's like, what's up? So I really enjoyed a lot of that stuff. The tension building, the direction in this episode was great. Yeah, I think I enjoyed the episode more than you guys did. But again, I haven't. I think perhaps book readers have built up the narrative and how it would pay off differently in their heads than somebody like me who's only known the show and hasn't spent years, kind of more years really, frankly, with these characters. So I think in that regard, I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I think, again, like to echo something I said earlier, it was really tonight that it hit me that this show is ending. Like the Night King is gone. And I guess if there was anyone who had to take him out, I suppose Arya's a nice misdirect there, that it wasn't Jon.
And it was so cool the way Arya did it, and how in the inside the episode, the showrunners pointed out that she stabbed him in the same place that the Children of the Forest originally put in that shard of dragon glass when they first turned him into the Night King. So
and in the Werewood, Godswood,
Yes.
which is right near where he was made originally.
Yes.
That
So-
move is right out of Last Jedi, though.
right
Yes.
when she
Rey
drops the
dropping that.
dagger
Yeah.
and then catches it,
I was
just
like, where
Rey
have I
with her
seen this
lightsaber.
before? And yeah,
Exactly.
it was straight from Last
Yeah,
Jedi.
and the kill was
Arya.
so good.
Yeah,
It
Yeah.
was so
right.
awesome.
Actually, one of my favorite portions of the episode was when it became a horror movie and Arya is trying to navigate through. And like we know that she, there are all these little cues as to what was going to happen. And one of the things is she is so sneaky. She is so quiet. She crept up on Jon before, and her kind of walking around and being so silent as she's navigating around. I thought that was really well done. And there were, not to the extent for me of Hardhome and Battle of the Bastards, where I really had moments where I was like, oh my God, like, is Jon going to die in the Battle of the Bastards when he, like, could this be the end? Could Ramsay win? What a Game of Thrones thing. Obviously that didn't happen, but I felt it in that moment. Same with Hardhome when the Night King reanimated everyone and you're like, oh God, how are they ever going to win eventually? I did have a couple moments specifically with Dany in this episode where I was like, she could die. Like, she could be gone. Obviously, that did not happen. And I do think one of my criticisms is it did kind of play out a bit predictably. There were I was expecting Bran or Jaime to go. I was expecting Pod to go. Like, Ed went, Theon went, like those were kind of
Jorah's
expected.
death wasn't like totally.
Yeah, you're like, he's sacrificing himself for the woman who friend zoned him for the entire time. They knew each other. It's fine.
Just as he always
Yeah.
wanted to go.
But I did like that there were those elements. And also to your point, like what a just gift for any fan of fantasy to see something like this come to life in such a way. The thing that did kind of bother me, and who knows, there are 3 more episodes. Like there could be more to this story than meets the eye. I hope we get some more of the lore of the White Walkers, because I kind of expected that to come into play a bit more. But just kind of, this is a big question, but what was the point of them this whole time? If that was all it was going to be, like what was the point?
Well, I
of
thought it
having
was
a
kind of
threat
interesting
big?
that if it was, the children of the forest brought them in, right? Children. And it was ultimately the children that took them out, right? You had Bran and, well, Lyanna got her moment, but we'll talk about that
Right.
later. And then Arya. So I thought there was something, a nice kind of symmetry to that. But yeah, I think ultimately if the idea of the White Walker was like White Walkers and the Night King was that we have never seen a threat like this before, then it should have continued further. Who knows? Maybe there's a twist coming that we don't see.
And I do think, to your point, like, the reason why it came up that you didn't know the Night King wasn't the Night King in the books is because we were discussing how the books don't really have a face to the White Walker threat like they do in the show. So much of the White Walker mythology hasn't been explored in the show. And so who's to say that this entire battle isn't completely manufactured by the show and there is more to it and more layers to what will happen in George R. R. Martin's version? That's kind of the downside of having the show be so divergent from the books and the books not come out. But there were a couple other things that just kind of bothered me. Like, where was Bran the whole episode? I'm a big Bran defender, but he was just like warged into some ravens the whole time instead of like, I thought he'd warg into a dragon, do something a bit more useful. Same with
Terry, you literally shouted, "Oh, Bran's gonna warg into a dragon." Then you're like, oh, no, that's
Yeah.
just Danny. Danny's riding that
Danny
dragon.
shows up, and also like Danny and Jon spend so much of the episode just being like, "Oh, we're in the clouds, like we can't see anything," and never come down to have their dragons fight on the. I don't know.
I actually understand that part because there was a bit of confusion of like, where are they going through this fog? I think that the Night King was playing with them. He was luring them away
Right.
so his forces could overtake the castle. They didn't want to be there. They knew they should have been at the castle, but they're like, we can't give up our chance to go, 2-on-1 and take out the Night King, like in the sky in an awesome dragon battle. Obviously, that didn't work out, but I understood why they were, lured away.
Yeah, I thought there were just a lot of beats that like played out as tense and interesting, like when the Dothraki ran off and then were pretty much destroyed, that, still didn't get kind of their emotional moment and payoff, even to the point of like, I know we've talked a lot about Ghost. We'll talk a little bit more about Ghost Watch, but he was like, he just never came back in the episode and didn't address it. Like he just went off, and then we see in the preview for next week's episode that he was there. I don't know. I'm someone who liked Battle of the Bastards way more than most people, so I get being on the wrong side of kind of the total sentiment. And our comment section has been down, so I don't know how IGN commenters necessarily feel about this episode, but I'm curious.
Oh, they'll let us know.
Oh, you'll let me know if you disagree with my take. But yeah, this one ended up feeling just a bit anticlimactic for me, but also I'm excited because I have no idea what the next 3 episodes or the actual finale will have in store. And you're right, Jim, there are only 3 episodes left, and endings do need to happen on this show.
I'm just curious too. Okay, so they take out the giant threat that has been like this thing of folklore, right?
Yeah.
How can any battle, more earthly battle between like just warring families for a throne, possibly compete with what we saw in tonight's episode? Like when it's just soldier on soldier kind of stuff, like we've seen that for season after season. We just saw dragons fighting each other in the sky. Like it's going to be a tough act to follow, I think.
I talked about this, I think on an earlier episode, but the two, at the beginning of the season, I was thinking maybe they defeat the Night King in episode 3, and then it's like 3 episodes of falling action. There were 2 things I kind of thought of. First, the way Breaking Bad ended, which I won't get into spoilers, but that's kind of similar, where the climax happens before the final episode, and then there's 2 episodes of human moments. And then similarly, at the end of Lord of the Rings, the books, like the thing that made me love that series was the final act of the story after they defeat Sauron. Spoilers, Sauron, the evil in Lord of the Rings, gets defeated. It's called The Scouring of the Shire, and it's about like, they defeated the big one-dimensional evil, and then what comes next? And there are like these small petty cruelties that like make it so you can never go home again. And even though you've fought this great war, there's things still get ruined and tainted. And so to me, that feels almost like what they could do here. Though interestingly, George R. R. Martin said that he really disliked the end of Lord of the Rings and kind of wrote this against it because he didn't like the idea that Aragorn just became king and all was well. And so I'm curious how that plays into the end of the show, knowing that we're getting to the point that it's like, who ends up on the Iron Throne? Dany, and she reigns until the rest of her days. But I am curious, like, with the idea that Cersei is this kind of malicious, evil, but very human. Like, we understand her motivations, we understand her bitterness. How can she kind of undermine, as Daenerys says in the preview for next week's episode, like, they defeated the Great War and now it's the last war. Is it, though? Like, that's what we have 3 episodes to kind of explore.
I mean, one possible avenue to that is that she somehow gets her hooks back into Sansa, right? I mean, that's the one, if there's any bit of a divide there, and that Tyrion knows this about Sansa, and Tyrion, obviously there's no love lost there with his sister, but it's still a sister, and Jaime is there. So it makes you wonder, like, how long are they actually going to keep this whole Jaime-Tyrion alliance thing going?
That's a great question. And let's first talk about the characters we lost in this episode very quickly and then get into our predictions for what we think comes next. So this segment we have named Did the Right People Die? Very dark, very bitter, very Game of Thrones. I think we kind of talked a bit about how we expected other characters to die, but for the sake of this segment, how do we feel about the Night King dying in brief in this episode? Joshua?
We covered that a lot already, but it was shocking to see him go. He didn't speak a word. What an incredible presence and a powerful character, which made it all the more surprising for him to go out by stabbing through the belly button.
I really liked the Night King this entire time. I thought he was a great villain for a dude who never said anything. And I thought that it was a powerful kind of way to take him out, but also leave all these other threads hang. So I think overall it accomplished what it needed to do. I just wish there had been a little bit more revealed about this character.
And who knows? Maybe that's what we have 3 more episodes for. How about Theon Greyjoy? I will take this one a little bit. I liked Theon's ending. I thought it was very poetic. It was very on the nose that he would die to protect the Starks, die to protect Theon, Bran, who he betrayed so many seasons ago. But Theon was always a character I thought would and should die, and I thought that it was a great arc for him this whole time.
I always thought Theon was such a garbage person who I hated, and
he is,
and didn't want him to get any sort of redemption because I feel like he did a lot of irredeemable things. Let's cut back to him chopping off the guys, like the master of the grounds of Winterfell, just chopping off the guy's head.
Let's cut back to his dick getting chopped off.
Yeah, let's, because he earned that one. And yeah, he like burned the corpses of 2 little boys and covered them in tar to it just. Ugh, he did so many like despicable things, and he's so petty. And I think he deserved the torture he got, and I'm glad he's dead.
Wow,
beautiful.
I will say this: he did win me back just a little bit because I thought he was just gonna get like run through and not take down any whites at all. But he actually did stand his ground, and defended Bran for quite a while. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. Give him a little bit.
After what was it, like 2 seasons of him completely losing his nerve, like that he died like a badass. But your litany of all his past sins really got me thinking, like, I guess screw him. I guess good thing he's gone. But it was a nice poetic end.
Even last season, he jumped off a boat instead of saving his sister. Yeah. So season 8 is the redemption of Theon. Beric Dondarrion, again, another character. I actually think Beric Dondarrion is a sign of what will happen to Jon Snow. Like Melisandre even says the line, he came back for a reason, he served his purpose. And I think the same with Jon Snow. I do not see Jon living through the end of this series because I think the Lord of Light brought him back for a reason. And that reason apparently has yet to happen yet. So Beric, I thought, again, fitting death in this episode.
I will say and especially as a book reader, and I love Beric, especially in the books, but in the show he's been great too. And it was just so sad to hear the reason the Lord of Light kept bringing him back over and over and over again, because we had always asked that, and other characters would question it too, was literally just so he would be there in that moment to get Arya, protect her, give his life for hers, and let her get to the home stretch to take out the Night King. Blew my mind.
Though it's fitting too, if you think about it, like when he died the first time we saw him die with the Hound and Arya, he once again was brought back to protect Arya in that moment. If you think about it, like, you know, and I loved seeing the three of them together again as well.
Brought back for one purpose, like me on this show. Now, I will say...
Did you die at the end of this episode?
Well, it's early yet. There's 3 more of these episodes. So, no, I enjoyed seeing One-Eyed Barry there go out, you know, like the way he did. I think he was a character I was never quite that attached to. You know, the Lord of Light works in mysterious ways, though, I guess. So, you know, he got a fitting kind of horror movie ending, but yeah, it was fine.
He took a lot of stabs before he went
Took
down.
many a stab.
That guy can take a beating.
All right, next up, we'll do 2 together. The final 2 Mormonts both lost their lives in this episode, Lyanna and Jorah. Jorah, as we talked about a little bit earlier, kind of predictable. Sir Friendzone, you know, died protecting the woman he loved. The Lyanna death, like, we cheered. We watched it together, and, like, what a little badass. Like, I love her so much. They said the showrunner said in the inside the episode, she was supposed to be a 1-episode character. It reminded me of Ben Linus in Lost, where like they saw a performance so effective that they were like, she is going to have a key role. And for the tiniest, bravest of them all, in the same way that Arya went and killed the Night King, for her to take out a giant, like, I loved that ending for Lyanna.
David and Goliath.
Yes, but and then of course so sad when she gets brought back later as a white.
That's just like an extra layer of badass.
I know.
So she gets to be a white.
Do you guys agree? Like, I loved that scene for her.
We agree. You nailed it, Terri.
Yeah. I will say it was heartbreaking to see her come back as a white. I didn't any other character, but not her. Come on.
Same with Ed, who of course we should talk about. Ed. I mean, we all voted. Like, we did predictions before this episode, and 100% of people thought Ed was going to die in this episode on IGN staff. R.I.P. Ed, but.
Yeah, I mean, I thought his death wasn't that surprising. Even the manner of it, like, oh, the old stab from behind through your chest move, you know?
The old stab from behind.
Never turn your back on the battlefield, pal.
And last up, Melisandre, who knew herself that she would die in her return to Westeros. What did you think about her both return and demise in this episode, Joshua?
Whoa, this is a character we can talk about for a second, because what a character to come out of like left field, who, you know, did say she was going to come back, but we didn't know when or how or why. But she comes back. She's like, all the Dothraki get essentially lightsabers, and then like I know all this cool stuff, and I'm gonna have these really important interactions with all these characters, and I'm gonna like change the tide of the battle essentially. I thought it was incredible for her to come back and just sort of see like her purpose and see it all laid out, and have that callback with Arya, where I actually went and looked up the line, but she essentially does say, you know, I see something in you, and you will seal people's eyes forever. You know, brown, green, and blue. And then, blue it turns out it's the Night King. That's all cool how it all kind of like came together like that. So, and then for her to, as it was happening, Terri, you were like, oh, she's going to pull off the necklace and she's going to walk out into the snow. She's going to die. And then that literally happened. Yeah. But still.
Luke Skywalker moment. Yeah.
It was still an effective, like really interesting moment for this really mysterious character.
I think having Davos there really underlined that.
There was that tension too of like, okay, is she going to get whacked before she even gets to do anything, because she's peeved so many people. I will say I do like the irony that a show all about the scary blue-eyed people. We have 3 brown-eyed people all talking about it. So there we go. I always liked her character, because I thought she had her reasonings, and she was a character of mystery and kind of a femme fatale, and there was kind of a tragedy to her, and yet you kind of hated her too, because she did some pretty nasty things. But I thought she got a very fitting ending, and this episode really did seem about redeeming characters that you didn't think were redeemable. So it makes me wonder about what's coming up next. What is the message really of this season?
She's a character I wish we could have. Yeah, that's actually a good question, because
and it
who
killed
knows
the
with
theory
Cersei?
I had about it.
Who knows about Cersei, right? A character who seems beyond redemption. But Melisandre is a character I do wish in this final season we'd gotten a little bit more of, because I'm with you, Jim. Like, you hate her at the beginning, but then you really, like, I think when she fails with Stannis, and then we get that reveal that she is so old and has been just living this purpose. Same with Beric, same with Jon. She's been living this purpose. like there's this bittersweetness to it where you get it. Like she has survived because of the power of her faith. And when she lost her faith and found it again in Jon, like she knew she was going to live until she saw the Night King defeated. But there was so much more mystery with her character, the question of who's Azor Ahai, like the question of, again, so many more things from the books that didn't really end up panning out at all in the show. Those are the things that I wish we'd gotten a little bit more time with her with, because I think she ended up, being one of the most complex and interesting characters on the show for the second or third tier characters, if you will. And I did think it was very beautiful the way she walked out and died, and she served her purpose. And Davos, who knows if he'll even have time to process it, or that's all he has, but she just disappears in front of him, and he'll have to contextualize everything he knows about her based on seeing her like turn so old and then literally turn to dust.
Well, the issue of faith too is interesting, because she has her faith tested at a really tough moment there, trying to light up the trench. And that was, to see her in that moment where you need her powers most of all, to suddenly be like, oh crap, I can't deliver performance.
She's like, come on, really, right now? All this for nothing?
It was a lot of wood. It was a big trench.
It was a big trench. Now, two characters we notably did not include on this list are Rhaegal the Dragon and Ghost the Direwolf. And that is because, spoilers if you don't want to know anything about the promos for next week's Game of Thrones, but if you do, we see both of them in the promo for next week's episode. We see Ghost kind of hanging out to the side while it seems like the people of Winterfell are lighting pyres for all the people who died. Why do they have to do that now? The White Walkers are seemingly dead. And then also Rhaegal we see flying alongside Drogon as the Daenerys or whoever are on ships heading off to who knows where. That we do have some theories. And that is our perfect segue to what the heck is going to happen next on Game of Thrones. The Night King is dead. Cersei is still alive and a threat. And we have 3 very long episodes to go. So, Joshua, why don't we start with you? No pressure. What do you think is going to happen before the end of Game of Thrones?
Well, as we saw in that preview, Cersei's front and center with a new outfit.
Looking fabulous.
Yes. And all eyes are on Cersei now, right? She is the one who has the throne. We got a lot of people who want the throne, namely Dany and Jon, and they are going to get it. I feel like it's all just a matter of time before. I don't know. Do they try and talk it out with Cersei first? Do they wage a war in King's Landing? Are we in for another big battle? And yet, to what Jim was saying, is it going to compare? Where do you go from here? I do feel like the next 3 episodes is where we will start seeing some more deaths, like of principal characters. And I think that I don't know if it'll be as easy as just who's on the throne. Because even, let's say Dany does take the throne next episode.
Right.
Because crazy things seem to be happening every episode now. I don't think that's the end of the story, right? Because even Game of Thrones itself takes place after Robert took the throne and then someone started a conspiracy to take it from him, right? So once she takes the throne, won't people conspire to take it from her?
Well, I think that's a really good point. And we even have, this episode was largely self-contained, but there's one moment when Sansa makes the comment to Tyrion, it would never work out because you side with Dany and I side with Jon. And Melisandre has kind of her catty comment where she's like, yeah, look where you'd be. We'd all be dead if Daenerys didn't show up. But I think that is setting up the seed of, there is still that continued conflict of, even if they do defeat Cersei, who sits on the Iron Throne? Is it Jon? Is it Dany? If it is Dany, the North isn't going to bow to her, even though they fought together, though it does seem in kind of the promo for next week's episode, they are kind of celebrating together. They seem to be looking at Daenerys as their queen. I think you're right. I think it's not as simple as just defeating Cersei. It's finding peace for the realm. And what does that even look like?
Yeah, I will say most rebellions then segue into a civil war. So it makes you wonder, how long are these alliances going to last? Because there's several threads that are still outstanding beyond just who gets the throne. There's Sansa and Daenerys' strife. There is Bronn, Jaime, Tyrion. There is Jon and Daenerys. There is all those dragon brothers, and we never touched on that earlier. That as the human siblings were fighting to save each other, the dragon siblings were fighting each other. A little something I noticed. I like that.
Viserion, Drogon, and Rhaegal.
Yeah, those guys. Huey, Dewey, Louie. Those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I really,
and Curly.
So I think that the show will probably more than likely start to lay out whether or not the Iron Throne will even exist by the end of it. I wonder if, like, will Cersei take a page from her late daughter-in-law and just blow the whole thing up? Like, if I can't have it, nobody can.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because as you were saying that, I was thinking how that prophecy or that vision that Dany had,
and Bran later has too. It seems to be important. He has it when he goes to the tree, yeah.
Of King's Landing, and it looks like what we thought was snow coming down in the ruins of the throne room and like around the Iron Throne. But now, is that going to be ash?
Does Cersei just nuke the place?
The
basically?
wildfire is still there.
Yeah.
She obviously used some of it on the Sept of Baelor, but do you think Cersei would be like, if I can't have the kingdom, then no one can, and like blow it up? Or is that like from the ruins of like a war that involves like dragons like lighting the place on fire?
Maybe. No, I did spend a good amount of time watching like the 5-second teaser for next week's episode, and I think I've puzzled out a couple key plot points. So again, spoilers if you don't want to know about that, but if you do, here's what I think
They want to know. They're here.
Know.
They're
Come
watching
on,
Dragons
you
on the
watched it.
Wall.
You know you
They
watched
want
it.
every scrap. They're just as addicted to this stuff as we are. Give it to us, Terri.
So I think we see, again, like we see the dragons flying over some ships. So I think that after they've kind of settled up all the storylines in Winterfell, I think Daenerys is going to head back to Dragonstone and say, she says in the promo, we've defeated the Great War and now we move on to the last war. Who knows if Jon comes with her, if Sansa comes with her. It seems like some characters are coming along. She at least seems to be taking her dragons. But the final shot of the episode, or of the promo, does look like it's Cersei and Euron and the Mountain on a ship as well, seemingly leaving King's Landing. And if that's the case, we know Cersei's plan from the end of last season was like, wait until they're either defeated by the Night King or completely crippled by their fight with him, which is what happened, and then we'll strike. Then we'll defeat her then. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Cersei take the Golden Company and head to Dragonstone and lay siege there, while presumably the Unsullied army and whatever's left of the Dothraki army are working their way down from the north, which doesn't seem to happen overnight, even if the ships might. So I'm curious, I think you were right with something you said, Joshua, a lot of what you said, but one thing in particular.
Oh, go on.
Which is that, I went into this episode personally, and I think a lot of other fans, expecting more characters to die than the ones that did. And with this kind of being that big linchpin episode where I thought so many characters would die, now it's like, what's going to happen? I still don't think everyone's going to make it out alive. So which episode could we lose key people? As you said, Jim, there's the conflict between Jaime and Tyrion and Cersei, and what happens with Jaime now that they've won the battle of the living versus the dead. Will he return to Cersei? Will he stay up north? Will she accept him? And similarly, you're right, who ends up on the Iron Throne? So I'm very intrigued to see.
We'll say Jamie saying that he's not the fighter he used to be. He's got one hand, and he was one of the last man standing. So he did pretty good.
Can I say missed opportunity not to give him a dragon glass like spear, like hook or something?
Yeah, seriously.
Listen, Gendry was making a lot of weapons. He didn't even know Jaime was coming. He didn't have time to handle that.
But he gave Arya her like Darth Maul
she
weapon.
Asked for it.
True.
To be fair. And also they totally banged.
And she paid for it. Right.
And we do see a brief moment of them making out again in the promo for next week's episode, which girl gonna get it. She just defeated the Night King. Like, good for her. She gets what she can sleep with whoever she wants.
So is she gonna end up in the throne and Gendry's her hand?
I would love to see Sansa end up on the Iron Throne and Arya be her hand.
Wow.
Or
Arya,
Brienne be
Warden
her,
of the North.
and then Brienne be the
King of the Knight's Guard?
Yeah,
or the King's Guard?
The leader of the King's Guard.
Yeah, all those
She's
words.
a knight now.
Yes.
Yes.
I actually don't think Arya wants to rule
I don't
or
think so
even
either.
have any sort of fame, which is why I think she'll like disappear into legend or like folklore after this, because I know her name's gonna be on the lips of literally every living creature ever, because they're gonna be like, she saved us all. She's the hero. She's like of the series, really. But I don't think that's something she wants. She's a woman who's an assassin, a woman of mystery, and and of many faces, and who is no one. And when people speak of who killed the Night King, we say Arya Stark, but to her, she is no one.
Yeah.
She's nobody.
Here's my last question for you. What's the point of Bran? What's Bran gonna do the next 3 episodes? What's the point of the Three-Eyed Raven, if there is any?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question, because if there was ever a time for this guy to step up and show us your powers here, Professor X, like tonight was the night, and he didn't really, he didn't seem to deliver any hint of what the humans left behind could do, or what he could have done to defeat these guys. Like, they could have defeated this guy without Bran. What actually did he bring to the table?
Other than drawing out the Night King to the werewolf.
I mean, was his whole point just to be bait?
I feel like he orchestrated the Night King's downfall, even though he literally did nothing, and they never followed up on what he was doing with the ravens. He was just watching. I don't know. But if you actually go back and look of when and where he gave Arya the cat's paw dagger, it's in the Godswood, right where she kills him. So
nice.
And in a way, I mean,
He's here, take it, you'll need it.
he's not necessarily prophetic, but he sure did a good job.
Were we bummed that the whole theory that he was the Night King didn't turn out to be true? I
There's
was a
still
little
time,
bummed.
Jim. There's
I
still
know,
3 more
maybe,
episodes. And, for every yin, there's a yang. So.
Arya killed the wrong one.
Yeah, she should have
Dun,
killed
dun,
Bran,
dun.
too. Well, on that note, thank you all so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dragons on the Wall. We will, of course, be back next week to break down episode 4, whatever it may be called. I got my theory right that this one was going to be called The Long Night. After that, who the heck knows? But we, of course, want to know your thoughts, so please do let us know in the comments below. We were a bit divided on this week's episode. Did you agree with us? And what do you think is going to come next? Will Bran have a point? We want to hear from you. Now, if you want more Game of Thrones, don't worry, we've got you covered, because every episode, that's 3 more for the end of the season, we are going to be doing live pre- and post-show watch parties. So if you want to see me have pretty much a mental breakdown on camera when I immediately needed to start shooting with Nick Mundy and Sydney Goodman after this episode ended, you can watch the episode 3 one. And if not, you can tune in at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. That is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week for our pre-show, we also have a very fun video if you need something light now that the Night King is dead, where we have the Game of Thrones cast responding to IGN comments. It's very, 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 very funny. So that's it for us this week on Dragons on the Wall. But for all things Game of Thrones, be sure to like and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch, and we'll see you next week.